Yeah, good
I
evening,
work
everyone.
with.
Yeah, Mridul, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say hi to everyone. That's it.
Okay, guys, good evening. Welcome. This
Yeah,
is
very
session
good
number
evening.
4 in the series of microservices, monolithic to microservices. We already had 3 sessions. I hope few of you were part of it. This is the 4th session. Today we are planning to cover DevOps, Agile, planning and testing. So the scope of these sessions is primarily when we have projects that want to move from monolith to microservices, whether it's developers, architects, decision makers, they can make some decisions on what is the reason why a organization, why a customer, why a product wants to adopt to move to microservices. That's the scope here. Okay. So we went through various journeys. Today we are covering the journey for DevOps, Agile, testing, and planning. Okay. So what to expect from this particular session? It's not like I'll take you to some basics of microservices. There will be some architecture discussions. We have done that in session number 1, 2, and 3. This session number 4, we are planning to discuss on code branching strategies, how to plan agile, how we can test out this microservices, and how we can roll it out to product development. This is the agenda for the discussion. So we have 1 hour. I really want to make it interactive session. Okay, so but the point is that we have such so much content. I will stop at two instances. One is at about the midway, and then you can have an open forum where people I'll throw it open for people's not it's not like questions, like people can discuss their experiences, and if you have queries we can discuss it in that session, and then one at the last. So that is the idea, because we have hard stop at 5:45. We have to stop the session. Okay, so let's just give another 2 minutes and see how many people join. Already 100 people are there in the meeting. Let's just give another 2 minutes and see how many people join. Okay. People are still joining. We have 115 now strength. Let's just give another 1 minute. And for those of you joined, the one slide that you see on the screen, um, I mean, that is like my latest, I mean, that's my published book on microservices. If you guys are interested, you can go and take a look at those links. Use that code if you want to buy it. That's the idea of the slide that I'm showing here. The second on the right is the expected book. In the next 1 or 2 months, it will be out. So that is the idea. Okay. Um, so this is the kind of, you can say, the session number 1, 2, and 3, the invite which was there. Okay, the first session was the pains of monolithic architecture. Here we went through what are the various issues faced by monolithic architecture, what are the reasons why anybody would want to go for microservices, or how why the people in the past who were using monolithic, they had issues, disadvantages, failures. The second was the needs and motivations for microservices. And here we discuss what is the specific advantages, the needs, motivations, which we can discuss only in favor of microservices. The third one we discussed from moving from monolithic to microservices, how to identify those services which are, how to identify those services which you can move to microservices. What is the reason why we'll move them? So that was the agenda there. And today we are on the 4th in the series. Okay. This is the one which we have today, and we're going to discuss about code branching strategy, how to roll out microservices to product development teams, planning for cloud and containerization, microservice architecture validation, and the typical agile roadmaps. Okay, so I want each of one of you to keep your mind open. You have to relate with your past work, current work, and possibly future work, and see where these things fit in. Already, like few senior folks might be involved in these activities already. The people who are, let's say, a little bit junior, they might be involved in the hands-on activity, but they understand what's going on in the project. They might not be planning it themselves, but they'll be involved in some activity or the other. And yeah, in the future, it might be helpful. Whatever is shown here, whatever artifact is shown here, this PDF itself, you can use it within your projects for your customers, present it. So that's the idea. Keep your mind open. I can't make it absolutely interactive because of time constraints. And yeah, so let's begin. It's 16:50, and we have 145 people. Wow, that's high. Yes, so we had 115 people. We had 125. We had 75. Now it's close to 150. Let's begin. All right, guys. So with this expectation that I've set for you, let's begin the session. All right. So like I said, this is the agenda, and we have in the past covered the prior topics that I showed to you, and this will be the focal point. I mean, whenever we discuss anything, so ideally monolithic, wherever we left the discussion in our last kind of you can say session was that I mean, first of all, let's define the four important types of architectures. One is monolithic, microservices, serverless, and SOA, which you have done in our previous discussions, but we'll just quickly go through it. So monolithic, wherever we have small code bases or wherever it is being used, wherever we have requirement for small applications or to be used by startups, that even till today, we will want to recommend monolithic architecture for it. If you have some complex large-scale systems, highly transactional systems, and there are multiple geographic distributed teams, you would go for microservices. And if they're client-heavy apps and we have a lot of background tasks and they're rapidly changing applications, we can try to consider for serverless. And SO is one where we want to integrate components of various enterprise apps, via service buses, which have complex operations. You can still go for SOA. So these are the four important architectures around which we, kind of identify for the purposes of this discussion. Okay. All right. So code branching strategy. So what is the meaning of code branching strategy? So ideally, what happens is that in organizations, when microservice reference implementation has to be taken ahead, people have product development stream, the mainstream, and that is where they check in their code on a daily basis. Then we have feature development. Usually, feature development is taken from the product development branch, and we might have next gen experimentation branches where people develop next gen features. They do some R&D. Okay, and then we have here I've drawn the reference implementation. So what it means is that a decision making organization, when we want to go for a Microsoft strategy or Microsoft architecture, he has to usually follow this principle that the code there should be code discipline in terms of the merging and branching. Okay, so here what I've shown or what I want to discuss is that when we are doing reference implementation, it is only very late when we have reached some checkpoint we want to merge it back to product development. Otherwise, most of the times it stays in the not to be merged status. Okay, and the same kind of code base which is there, which is merged with product development, might be used for feature development, might be used for next gen experimentation. So we have to be absolutely what has to happen in the beginning is that when we develop the microservice infrastructure, like we can have the services like messaging, you can have containerization, load balancers. Um, we have to make sure that they follow the check-in, check-out process on the reference implementation path until the time we have reached a maturity level in the code base. Okay. Even though this is a simple thing which most of us follow, but this is what the architect or the decision maker has to decide. Right from beginning, he has to make sure that till the time the reference implementation is mature. Usually it will be the some core research team that is working on it. When it is mature, only then we have to branch it to the product development. We have to merge it to the product development branch. Okay, that's the main idea of code branching strategy when we which we follow. Okay, then there should also we can also have some additional branches where we do some things like architecture validation testing. Okay, it can be functional or non-functional. So that reference implementation branch has to be disparate from the other code branching branches which is there in the organization. Then the product development. Now, already, people might be checking into product development, daily features might be being developed, agile process might be going on. So this goes on irrespective of the Microsoft reference implementation. So what happens is that at given checkpoints of time, when we meet the milestones, we say that microservice reference architecture, that is the branch, has reached one maturity level one. We have milestone one. At that time, we decide that all configuration declaration code deployment we can merge it into the product development. So that is how the DevOps or the architect or the code branching strategy has to be decided in terms of when actually the merge will happen back to the product development, the code base. Okay, so visualize that in your mind. The code base, one branch goes to the the reference implementation, Microsoft reference implementation. Next one is the main product development, and then uh, we have the one which is called as the feature development, which branches from the product development. So feature development is sometimes same or sometimes different product development. This is a normal circumstance you would have seen in a project. You build your own feature development branch or a hotfix branch, and then you develop and merge it back to the product development. So this goes on respective microservices. And next gen experimentation. So many organizations they follow a path which is different in terms of research and development, in terms of product architectures, newer features, exploration. Like microservices might be one of the explorations, but there might be other feature-based explorations. So all of this goes on in a different branches. So that refreshes the code from product development at the times which are decided, which might be disparate, which might or might not be disparate from the microservices reference implementation architecture. So what it means is that when we come back to our first diagram, this skeleton strategy which I have mentioned here is already usually followed in the projects, but it has to be reiterated that while Microsoft reference development is going on, we have to make sure that Microsoft branch is staying different. It reaches to maturity levels and then is merged back into the product development, feature development, or the next gen branches. That's the idea of the code branching strategy. Okay. And this has been done in real world in my previous organizations. We have done this to good success levels. Okay. Because the code which is a reference implementation should not be merged with the product development branches. So that's the idea. Now, when we are doing such development, like which is disparate from the actual product development, when do we roll out? So what are those checkpoints when we say we are going to roll out the reference implementation to the product development? Okay. Now, see, we are as a decision maker or as an architect or a senior engineer, you'll have to decide the kind of questions that you need to answer in terms of typical questions that you need to answer. Okay. Now, why, what are the initial questions that I have to answer before I say that I'm ready to roll out microservice RI to the product development? Okay. So very basic questions we answered in this earlier sessions of the series. What is like? Let's say here, I just you can see the table there which says identify the need to what is the what is the need to move Microsoft architecture. So what are questions that a person has to answer? What are the long-term reasons for customer to move to microservices? Okay. So what are services that I need to move to microservices? So all the services, or whether it's a mix, whether it's a hybrid, whether it's a hybrid mode that you have to decide. Then identify the technical architecture to be modernized. So whether it is everything that will modernize or will it be only few things like exception handling, logging, security, utilities, whatever. Now we have to decide which are the critical and major defects, whether we'll fix them along with this or whether it'll be disparate. Okay. Identify the components that need re-engineering. Okay. So this table lists down each and every, you can say almost most important aspects, which are whether it is database, whether it's architecture, whether it's existing defects, whether it is the process, infrastructure, non-functional performance, the testing. So by answering those questions against each of these points, I'm making sure that I've answered. I have made sure that my code base, my representation kind of, you can say, real world. It is like the validation, the verification. First of all, it is whatever I'm doing is right, and whatever is required is what I was doing. So that is what I need to do by answering these questions. So that is when I reach to a maturity point in this phase is when I say that I'm ready to roll it out to the product development. So that's the idea. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Yes, Sumit.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello guys, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Sumit.
Yes.
We are able
Yeah,
to
we
hear
can
you.
hear you properly.
You can see my screen as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it is there.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Because I don't know, something just happened for one moment. Some prompt came up. Okay. So okay. So the next one is the what is the in terms of research phase, what are those? So that was something which I spoke, which is in terms of a larger process, like what is the questions that I need to answer against what aspect, whether it is the architecture, whether it's testing, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's process, or whether it is planning the rollout, or whether it's user interface, if we have any project related user interface changes. Okay, so here and the next kind of thing which we need, which our team would need to do, is have a real world checklist in terms of, again, this is like what are the specific components that I'm going to build. Okay, now why see why all of these things are important tomorrow. This entire series of microservice architecture is designed when a company first adopts a microservice architecture. Okay, so they go through each of these journeys, and then when they start building the actual components, what is it that let's say a senior architect, a person who's in charge of decision making, a company, okay, let's say organization who's moving to reduce their risk, what are the things that they have to do? Because this is because whatever has been done, whatever I'm showing here has been done actually in the real world. So I also use help from other sources, but by doing this, we're reducing the risk on an organization, the chance of failure or chance of missing out something, or chance of wasting time or increasing time to develop is reduced. So one by one, you can plan out what are the deliverables that you will give out. Like here, it's gone to all the way to lower level. Like we say, we complete the software architecture document microservices. We say we prototype Spring Boot microservices, and we prototype on Docker, like agile phase, one by one. We prototype my config server, prototype service discovery, circuit breaker. We prototype API gateway, load balancing. So this way, one by one, we are saying that in a very agile way, we are either this can, because this is a research work, this will not form part of stories. So this might be a chunk of work, and we can break down to tasks. So this is the usual, you can say, in a research phase, the typical task at a lower level which exists. So the combination of these two, where the answers are given, and we have a progressive list which will keep on updating. Here we are talking about coding standards, prototype caching, data grid. We talk about security, JWT, OWASP, architecture validation to testing. So this combination is what is going to help me to roll out Microsoft RI to product development. Okay. So here on the last in the last row, you see we are saying end-to-end production ready microservice architecture for one use case. So that is, after following these set of tasks or steps, you reach to end-to-end production ready microservice architecture for one use case. So that's the idea. Okay. Mm, okay. All right. Now, once done with the let's say uh, the aspect of code branching falls somewhere in DevOps. DevOps and architects, usually managers will decide the code branching strategy. This is mostly decided by architect and managers. Okay. Then we move to cloud and containerization, which primarily belongs to DevOps or DevOps architects. Okay. So here, what is the once we are getting into Microsoft strategy, what is the choice of cloud providers that we are going to use? Okay. That see it will not, it's not something that's going to decide our success or failure, but it can. Okay, so whether we are going to go for an AWS or a GCP, SD, or whatever, maybe some other forms, we have to make that decision here. Whether we're going to go for no code or low code, so that is interesting. So what happens when you're going to go for a cloud provider? Many of these many of these lower level microservice paradigms like API gateway, circuit breaker, config server, they are provided out of the box by these cloud providers. It might be as simple as configuration, and you can just get it up and running. But or will we go for those kind of things, or are we going to go for our own kind of, you can say, development frameworks like Spring Boot, Spring Cloud? So that's the decisions that you have to make. Okay, then native cloud usage. So are we going to similar as a point number two, but it goes further, whether we're going to use all the resources which are provided in a cloud, whether we're going to build our Microsoft strategy for a specific cloud, a native cloud. Let's say my strategy is completely hooked to AWS, so or GCP or Azure. Is that what I'm going to do? So those decision is what I have to take, and we have to plan for it upfront. Okay, and then whether we're going to go for Docker, Kubernetes, what I've marked AWS there by trying to say that whether we are going to go for EKS or are we going to go for ECR, ECS. What is the flavor, or are we going to use Kubernetes on EC2? So what is that mechanism that I'm going to use for the purpose of my deployment is one another important decision or planning that needs to be done from the DevOps team. Okay, the point number five is quite similar. Okay, so what is the kind of flavor that I'll use for the purpose of Docker, Kubernetes, basically for the purpose of um, containerization. So that this particular these points might be the primary points which will help the DevOps team to decide on all aspects of deployment, the support, the future maintenance aspects of the microservices. So yeah, so that is the DevOps considerations. Okay, now what usually when we are going to compare, when let's say I have, because this is a very important question, usually architects or senior engineers would have to answer. Okay, why should I go for Spring Boot or Spring Cloud and code them vis-a-vis using an Amazon Web Services based using the platform? Why should I use a Spring Boot or Spring Cloud? So there are so many points that usually you can say for evaluation purposes that I can go through: the ease of use, the learning curve, the documentation provided, the maintenance aspects, license costs, open source, vendor lock-in, integration ease, skill availability, extension integration. So see, for an architect, for a decision maker, when a company is adopting microservices, he has to make sure that all the decisions are there, they're bound. If required, any simple evaluation is done, and it is there because it's going to decide um, um, let's say a big bank says that I want to move to microservices. Okay. So these are the kind of, you have to understand what goes on behind the kind of things which will go on in the world of DevOps, in the world of the decisions which will matter for them, which means lot of money, lot of maintenance cost, maintenance hurdles. So these decisions have taken upfront so that the risk chance is very less for them. Okay. 100% cannot be done upfront, but let's say by the knowledge or the mistakes which others would have made, we could the company should not make the same kind of mistakes, the case studies. So all those things are one which is going to help in the world of DevOps decisions, agile project management, in terms of what we need to test. Okay, and planning, what planning we need to do to move it out to product development. So those are the things that I'm trying to bring out here. Okay, so that is what you have to understand when you're attending these sessions, that these points, you can take it along with you in your mind, and maybe this PDF will be there with you tomorrow when you are faced with such a situation, or when you're going through this, you can refer to it and then relate. If not, maybe already you're relating to it already in your project. You might be facing such situations, or you might be going through such thing. You are going to have gone through it in the past, or maybe you itself were part of such a kind of decision making. Okay, so maybe you can relate to this. Again, there are various other factors as well: performance, security, scalability, monitoring. So health monitoring is one very important aspect. Okay, the tools in the ecosystem which are available. Okay, what are companies which are already using the paradigm, whether it is AWS cloud or whether it's Spring Cloud? Yeah, DevOps development. What is the ratio, like where exactly will the skill fall into? Okay, so these so many, like I think we have seen about 15 kind of points, or 15 to 20 points. So this, apart from this also, there might be many other things. So by answering this, we can take those final decision on which way we want to pursue our development. Okay, how we'll go ahead with microservices. All right. So moving ahead, um, I would want to talk about the okay, architectural validation. Now, what happens usually is that once we have microservice architecture, reference implementation, okay, the initial architecture in place. So this is something which will continuously evolve. Okay, and even though I have written a book on microservices, I'm a proponent of microservices, I would want to say that it's quite a heavyweight infrastructural piece. Okay, and there might be frequent updation to it. Versions might change, new components might be added. It might become more standardized. Okay, there are blueprints which are given by organizations to say that yes, we certify you as a standard microservice architecture. So, so those kind of things we need to test it upfront. We want to say that we have done the architecture validation, okay, which means that whatever we built as part of reference implementation, it is something which was functionally correct, okay, in terms of as simple as things like API gateway, circuit breaker, discovery server, they all working for the positive and negative cases, okay. Um, just one moment. Um, okay, it's fine. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Mm, okay. Yeah. So, Yeah. So we need to make sure that there is a architectural validation testing um, that is in place. Okay. Um, we we need to use whatever testing tools that we have, whether we are testing frameworks, need to put it to good use for the purpose of automating this test. Okay. That is the basic. Like you can say we have smoke test of some applications of a which make sure that the most basic things work. The same way architecture validation provides us with that kind of smoke test for the architecture, saying that all things which are there are working fine in place. So that is the idea of initially verifying that all important infrastructure components, whether it is config server, circuit breaker, discovery server, API gateway, load balancing, they are in place and working fine. And it's automated. So that way, anytime if things have to undergo change, okay, let's say the reference implementation branch is there, so you can relate this testing to that branch. So if things have to change, I will do testing as and when the branch gives some release. I'll make sure the architecture is validated. Only then it's made to release to the product development. Okay. Now, this is the functional aspects. So the same way, what if we hit a bottleneck saying that because there are so many components, what if we hit a bottleneck, saying that there's some issue when we are using some circuit breaker, there is some deviation performance. Okay, so all these kind of things in terms of the baseline performance, in terms of architecture validation, so you have to do the non-functional testing as well. So those also should be part of your planning for the testing. Okay, so that that would make sure that functionally and non-functionally in terms of performance, we have the baseline stuff in place. Whenever changes are being made um, in the microservice branch and when releases are being made, we need to make sure that the testing is done for those. Now, as and when changes are being done, okay. So first two parts were simple. You can say like performance testing and functional testing, but there is something which usually happens when we work on like reference implementation in terms of research. Usually there are many frequent changes that goes on which impact the stability and performance. Okay, so they'll undergo something called as architecture erosion. So which means that things might be a lot of changes might happen at once. They might in unknown ways performance might deteriorate. So this is something that we need to plan as for testing. Okay, now what are the phases in which we will what is those the points we have decided that we're going to release. So at those points we need to make sure merge our testing strategy or testing plans. Okay, and only then we roll it out to product development. Only then we merge it to the product development. Okay, so that is the idea. One is along with one testing might be planned, which is at the architecture level, the architecture validation, and one might be around the regular product development release that we plan that when the reference implementation integrates with product development, I test my product using microservices. So that's a different planning separate from this. So that's the idea of having planning for testing. Okay, for architectural validation purposes. Okay, so uh, since this is too much of like DevOps, and you can say planning, you can say strategic planning and code branching. So at higher level architecture, these are things which is done. I would want you to slowly, I mean, when you get hold of this PDF, go through it, and I'm sure each of these things, each and everything, if you're working on Microsoft, you relate with it. Okay, it has happened in your might have somebody would have taken decision on this. Maybe they are right now taking some decisions. In the past, you might have been part of it, so it will be better for you to appreciate what is given in these slides. Okay, because there's a lot of verbose, a lot of text is there here, so it'll be better once when you have the catch hold of this PDF, you go through it yourself as well. Okay, so we are somewhere like in you can say midway. I would want to take this opportunity that we break out in terms of break out in the sense that all folks here, I would want them to share their experiences from their projects in the past, current, and where they are able to relate with this series of microservices sessions. and the current session. And if there are any queries, we can throw it open. Yeah, please go ahead, guys. I'm muting myself. Please go ahead. Anyone, we would just want some examples from your projects. Okay, you come up with examples of success stories, issues, maybe something that you can relate directly from these slides. We all want to hear. Next 3-4 minutes we have. I would want you to the people to come on,
Hi,
guys.
this is
We have
Sikandar.
150 people here.
Hello, Sumith. Am I audible?
Yeah, please. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
just wanted to share my experience in my previous company. So there were
Is it
actually
Sikandar
Yeah, this is Sikandar.
who's speaking? Sorry, I'm not
Yeah,
able
this
to.
is.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So just wanted to share that there were two teams working in my previous project. So and we had a requirement that we used to give uh, production deployments that releases after every sprint. But the product owner informed us that the requirement which we are currently developing, it will be deployed only after 2 sprints. So we had to hold that work which we have done in current sprint for until 2 sprints until it gets deployed into production. So for that purpose, I had proposed the strategy, branching strategy, wherein we will have alternative branch uh, where all this code will be there, which is not going to production. And only that code which is going into production, it will be there in the SIT branch, that is the system integration testing branch. Yeah. So, but they proposed that instead of that, we should have the code in the SIT branch as well, that is production ready code, but it should be in some kind of disabled mode. Yeah, so just wanted your views. Are there any techniques like where like we can have code as a in disabled mode, even though if it is in the branch? Yeah. Although
Yeah,
those people agreed to my suggestion that we should have alternate branch, but from your perspective, I wanted to know any suggestion.
yeah. So usually that's a good question, Sikandar. For people who are working on Spring Boot, okay. So people working on Spring Boot, they may realize. Usually we have the concept of profiles. Okay. So what it helps us is that, like when we are having, let's say when we are going to build something for the purpose of so you had the SIT branch, right? Now disabled I cannot say, but we have the idea of profiles. If we say that we want to build for the we want to build for testing, we want to build for staging, we want to build for dev, we want to build for developer test. So what are profiles we build? Usually what happens is that until the time we build it using that option, we the those it the configuration parameters or the config server parameters will not be set to into the build. So that is the idea how we usually build. So in some projects, what they do is that they have the central branch, and where they keep giving the releases. But when the environments which they want to deploy, they build it for the purpose of those for those particular environments. Like let's say we are working on whatever release number 13.5 or whatever. Now there is people who are working on 13.5 dev test, and sometime later people work on 13.5 test and 13.5 prod, whatever. So we give the release when we do the build, picking up those configuration files is how we usually give the release. Okay. Now, in your specific case, you're saying that you build the SIT branch, right? And then you have to you want to find a way that how we can disable it. That is primarily Jenkins. I mean, if you're using Jenkins kind of tool, we just have to make sure that nobody has the. I cannot think of anything better. Other people here can suggest something. I can only think that when you're using the Jenkins, it should not be. I mean, the Jenkins admin should not allow you to do a build on that particular branch. That's the best I can think. Other people, you have any suggestions on what Sikandar asked? Like anything that you can come up with? I that's the best I can think from my
Yeah,
experience.
thanks, Sumit. Yeah, that profiles is really rich.
Yeah,
Yeah, and also we should lock the branch until we are not ready for production. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sumit, this is Badresh. So regarding this microservices, right? So can you name some testing tools that can be used for microservices testing?
Yeah, good question. Okay. Out and out, I'm not sure of a testing tool. The ordinary RPA like Selenium and those suffice. JMeter Selenium combination. And if you want to go for something else, also you can go for. But Selenium JMeter combinations would suffice. But for the purpose of these certification, okay, there is something called testing is different. Certification is different. For certificate purposes, there is a site called Microservices.io, and that gives you a set of. I mean, either they do it by themselves or they give you a kind of set of questionnaire, a checklist where they say that yes, your Microsoft architecture process testing is certified to be standardized. So that is uh, what I know. But any specific testing tool, I am not aware. Sorry, I know of the what we use the Selenium JMeter, the ordinary Selenium JMeter combination.
Oh.
Guys, anybody has used any specific testing tools? Please come up with the specific testers here in the team. In this any testing tools anybody want to suggest, which are out and out Microservice specific? All right, Badrish, I will also. That's a good question. Let me also see if there are anything specific. I'll interact with you later.
Yeah. Thanks, Sumit. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you.
Sumit.
Any strategies also, if you have, you can share. That will be really.
I will share with you for movement of monolith to microservices. For testing strategy, okay, I may have some fewer final points which I can share. I will share it with you later.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi, Sumit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. And thing is like once you deploy your microservice to the cloud, so how do you is there any way that you check whether that your microservice is running or it is stopped or it has crashed?
Yeah, Mohit. So that's a good question. So that's a very big area. I mean, very big and popular area called Microsoft's health monitoring. So there are plethora of tools. Okay, plethora of tools. There is something called as Grafana. Then there are health reporting tools like Histrix, and then there is things like Datadog, and there is one another from AWS which is very popular. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name. So there are plethora. There's a one huge market, commercial market for Microsoft's health monitoring. So either people go for the smaller companies might go for free versions. The bigger companies usually go for the paid versions. Okay, and Datadog is one popular health monitoring tool. It is not just for Microsoft; it's for others as well. But they have all grown to be capture the world of microservices. So they sit in the cloud and they monitor it. They also give metrics on what are the current performance times and whether it at what time they are unavailable and those kind of things. So they can send out all the things like email, SMS, and everything to the like they're all complete tools which are existing. So yeah, that's the answer to your question.
You
All
can
right,
use
guys.
Kibana
Yeah,
log for.
Ghanshyam?
Yeah, we can use Kibana log for the monitoring.
Yeah,
tool.
Kibana. Yeah.
QA we have.
Yeah.
Apart from that, even though we have API gateway level, also we can do.
Yeah. They might be. I mean, when they interact at that point, yeah, they can integrate. We can integrate at any level. But the health monitoring is overall holistically everywhere it exists. They can possibly, I think, integrate with service mesh as well. So they integrate various points, and yeah, the main things is what is the current, what has been the availability, what are the performance times, what time they were down, and then what is the alerts that need to be sent to whom. Those kind of things are existing in the standardized health monitoring tools. So guys, let's move ahead. So yeah, the next thing that I want to take you through is the high level roadmap. So this is ideally in terms of, you can say, a project manager or a director level, like a person who, when you start off in an organization, everybody would participation of this activities in organization usually, but it's a person who plans, like initially, who says that my product, my company is working on Monolithic, so where do I get ahead? So usually you would see in organization few senior folks first deciding, okay, you can call them management or principal architect or whatever senior architects, and they get here to decide. They might have some kickoff meetings, understanding the needs, the vision, the company timelines, in saying that yes, we are going to move to microservices, and we need to first identify whether what are the kind of advantages, disadvantages, and during this time itself, during this phase, let's say we say that yes, we are fine, we are going to get ahead. So let's go ahead and build up architecture document around that. Okay, how we are going to move. We have a current product. Let's identify the services which we are going to move, and how we are going to move will capture it in the architecture document. So usually things like review of software architecture documents, prototyping and POC of the microservice reference implementation, then the architecture validation, and then saying that we are ready, the readiness, the verification and certification. We do these activities to make sure the initial, here it shows something around like an year's time, but usually small organization might do it in 3 months time, an organization might do it in 6 months time. But I would say somewhere around 6 months time for a decent sized product which is running the market, people might take to move from one architecture to another architecture, uh, to the level of an UAT or going live. Okay, so it might take that much time to um, kind of make sure that all risks are being handled. Okay, this I'm saying in terms of a bigger organization which has a lot of stake. I mean, lot of things at stake. So just to make sure that they've identified, they've understood what they're doing. Okay, because there are some risks involved around data management, data handling. So that's the idea. Then, so during this time, okay. So see, everybody might not here might not have been part of such a movement from Monday to microservices. Everybody might not be in marking microservices, or they might not know of any of the tools, okay, which I just like mentioned. Maybe circuit breaker, maybe things like whatever API gateway and whatnot, the components which I mentioned, people might not be aware. So a typical checklist, okay, with typical set of in an agile world, okay. So when an organization gets ahead, the research phases might work on loosely based agile, okay. There might be regular frequent demos or sprints which go on even the research phase. So ideally, this list here shows what comes out with each particular passing week or 2 week sprints, where we say that the first here you can see at the beginning, if you start from bottom up, you can see that there was review meeting of architecture document, and then we say that basic microservices are out, Spring Boot API gateway, then we have integration with service discovery, circuit breaker, config server, then there is a decision meeting to get whether we are going to get ahead with something or not, then there is some change of plan, change of strategy, a demo of the current state of microservices, then we incorporate circuit breaker, Histix dashboard, Histix turbine history stream. Then we say client side load balancing we are incorporating. Okay. So this typically agile way, which we are saying that every week or 2 weeks we are getting ahead on the architecture front, is something that is kind of we should typically will see in a movement from monolith to microservices or in a microservice reference implementation planning when you plan for the agile. So that's the idea. Okay. And okay, so milestone list. So that is a plan. Now, how did you deliver on that? So when this was something which you did at the, you can say this is something. Okay, this is actual demo. Sorry, the demo which happened, and this is a milestone list. The demos and milestone might not be one and the same. They might be different. Okay, because here in agile phase, like you might improve on things, you might add or subtract things, but here is something that we are saying that we have planned for these milestones, and what are the proposed demo date and what is the actual demo date. So proposed, we say here in a left side, as part of the planning, from May to July, some plan was done that we'll do the API gateway, circuit breaker, config server, Docker, Kubernetes. We'll do incorporate security, service mesh, and then there will be planning for testing the architecture. We have a demo of the end-to-end use case. We have multi-tenant database access, and then ongoing demo of the product use case, the actual product use case after incorporating microservices. So then we have checkpoint to stop and plan and see what we are going to do, whether we're going to deploy to production line or not. Okay, we are going to take it ahead to product development or not. So these are the kind of things are planned and the actual demo date in a real world project. So these kind of artifacts, okay, I will provide this PDF to you. You can refer them if ever you have to do this for your project. You can refer to them in terms of any of these things which are provided here. Okay, at least if not, maybe you might be part of it. If not doing it by yourself, so that time you can give your suggestions to your whichever customer you're working for or whatever project you are in. So and it'll give you a kind of feel of the agile planning which is required when you are doing the Microsoft R&D work. Okay, so the kind of thing that like which I want to suggest here was that we in our project we are primarily using the Spring Boot. So we were using Spring Boot, Spring Cloud in this specific plan which I did in a previous organization, and we were using things like Histrix and Turbine. They are for the purpose of measuring the performance, and we had something called a Spring Cloud Bus for the purpose of config server, and we had something called as Ribbon, which is client-side load balancing. So that is a kind of um, things that we um, used in terms of the lower level technologies for the purpose. The Spring World people might have heard of these tools. Then we actually used Docker on Windows for some time, and then we moved to Docker on the Unix Linux, and we we were also working on things which were we used Zool API Gateway for some time, and then we dropped that in favor of Spring Cloud API Gateway. So that is the kind of activities we did in the real world product development for the microservices. So that is kind of things which cover the um, all activities that I had in terms of code branching and rolling out to product development, planning for cloud and containerization, and then for the architecture validation testing, and then for the agile sprints. Now, the question here is that where exactly would these things be useful for you? Like I told you earlier, um, in your project now, let's say if you are given a task that a company is moving to monolithic to microservices, what I need to do? Okay, you are part of it, or you are the exclusive person who's being given the task to kind of plan for it. So you can use each of the artifacts that is given here. Okay, each of the things, like anything that was given here right from the beginning. Okay, you can first you can also refer to the site microservices.io. It'll give you some knowledge. Okay, then you can come up with we come up with such titles like on the left hand side you see the titles which are there, right? So let's say you are given the kind of decision making responsibility. You come up, ask the go to each of the titles, whether it is Microsoft architecture, whether it is like I said, services, technical infrastructure, the process components, database design, architect non-functional requirements, customer integrations, testing strategy, and then ask answer the specific questions. Okay, now these are questions here. Beyond this, there'll be answers like why we need it. Okay, why we need the what is the response time that is expected from the system? What are the third party integration, customer integrations? What is the phase out time for the existing system? Okay, uh, what is how we are going to um, re-engineer persistence layer? Okay, then what are the defects that I'm going to fix or not, which I told you earlier also. So these kind of questions and against your titles is what you'd have to come out with. And then, like I said, the specific lower level task milestone in terms of strategy execution. Okay. And if you have to compare any time, like this is something which is usually given in a project, so you'll come out with the DevOps planning. This might not be AWS, this might be Azure in your case. It might be even be like what you say GCP or anything else. And then you say why I want to against each of these important contexts. Okay, like an organization for an organization it might be tough to get a Azure API skill. Okay, people want to work on something called as maybe native Azure, and it's tough to get this skill. So that is one might become an important reason for not to get ahead with that. And Spring Boot is something which might be easily available. So you say that I go ahead with Spring Boot. And there is a lot of documentation and blog help which is very easily available. So you say I will go for Spring Boot or Spring Cloud. I go for absolute code based development. Then maybe you might find out that when you're going to use native development in terms of performance, security, scalability, or finding things marginally better than the Spring Boot world. So which are the companies who are using, what are the case studies which are there. You might find out that people who did not plan well for the persistence layer and maybe using Spring um, Cloud or whether they're using Spring Data, uh, Hibernate, whatever, they did not plan it well, and then they faced issues in data consistency. So all those kind of things is what you have to come up upfront, because you know these things, you will not be making the same mistake. So that is the idea. Then once you move from that world, like when you, like I already mentioned once, you at a highest level, you will say that these one, two, three, four, five activities, whether it is architecture, POCs, testing, rolling out to product development, these are activities which are going to um, allow me to move it to product development, move out functions to product development. And then you would actually come down and start developing it, whether there might be usually senior folks at the beginning who would do the regular demos in terms of every component that you want to build in terms of infrastructure. And during this time also you'll be taking a lot of lower level decisions, okay, which specific make of what to use, whether you use client-side load balancing or server-side load balancing, whether you are going to use some event-driven architectures, are you going to use service mesh? So what specific messaging are you going to use? Whether you're going to use Kafka or RabbitMQ. So once, I mean, you're on this particular activity, you'll be in the thick and thin of the reference implementation. Okay, you'll be ready, you'll be understanding already what the, you'll be already developing microservices. Only thing is that it will not be your product development, because you have to make sure that with simple POCs, first you make sure that everything is working fine, your architecture is validated, tested, which you already planned for, and only then you roll it out for the purpose of product development. Now, this one is something at a, like you can say that the product manager at the starting would say that these are my proposed demos, okay, proposed milestones. So when let's say you are involved in the core R&D team, you are developing along with the architect, and the customer propose the planned or the promised milestone for customer are each of these. So by doing these activities, by doing these demos, you achieved each of these milestones, okay, larger milestones. So that is the idea. So part by part, you'll complete your reference implementation and then decide to roll it out to the production line. And all the while, you have to keep in mind the first thing that we started off in today's discussion. When you're doing this development, you have to make sure that you propose the right kind of code branching strategy, the discipline in checking in and checking out the code, in merging the code, so that later there are no issues which are faced. So this combination of these activities, okay, like whatever we discussed today, um, the DevOps, the Agile, the planning, and the testing, okay, will help us to smoothly roll out microservices to the product development. Okay. Now, once we are, what is the meaning of rollout? Rollout means that we have done POC, reference implementation ready, it is tested, and now we can start using it for product development. Now we might face some newer issues, smaller issues, okay, which might not be as greater as your previous ones, but it might still, ideally it shouldn't be because you've spent enough time, but now you'll be dealing with use cases, actual use cases which you will decide that how we are going to use the reference implementation to build out microservices. Now, what you see on the screen, the next session, we will actually have the hands-on session where we will hands-on in the sense, during the session, we will go through each of these components which we mentioned one by one. In 1 hour, we'll try to take it ahead. It'll all be in Spring Boot and Spring Cloud. Okay. And we will use Docker, and we will try to build whatever we did in these 4 sessions. We'll try to bring this outcome. The reference implementation is called Obliques. So that's my kind of favorite cartoon character, you can say. So I use the term Obliques. So this code will be later will be there in the GitHub. So that is what we'll do in the next session. And yeah, I can say that is about it from this session. Okay, we have 4 to 5 minutes. Again, I'm throwing this session open to everybody. People participate now. We have 3-4 minutes where they can share their thoughts, share their experience. Okay. Yeah, guys, go ahead. So, guys, you can discuss anything which is from your project, from your past experience, anything at all on Microservice world, ideally. It might be from Spring Boot world, possibly from, I don't know, .NET world. If you want to discuss, you can go ahead. If not, the next session was going to be on the hands-on activities. We will actually develop all these components together and see what is the advantage that we get from this microservice architecture. We understood it till now. Let's just build it and see quickly in the next session, the reference implementation. Okay. And I would share this PDF with you. Okay. This QR code here is related to my blog. I write blog on microservices, Java, J2E, Agile, innovative product development. So you can subscribe to my blog directly if you're interested. Okay. And you can contact me anytime for anything that is in the world of microservices, ideally, Java, J2E, or software architecture design, and we can discuss on it. And if you have any suggestions as well, you can pass it on to me, or if you have any questions specific to your project or your personal projects as well, you can approach me. Okay. Thanks, guys, for your time. Yeah, we have 3 minutes still left. So I think Archana is here and she wants to discuss
Right.
something. Yeah.
Right. Hi, Sumit. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule and giving us this opportunity to learn this session. And just a humble request to all of you who have joined this session. I have just shared a feedback link over this chat. Please do fill this. It will only take 3 minutes of your time, and it will definitely apprise us, how this session was and what were your inputs, any suggestion, any improvement, or, even if you would like to present XK session next time, what will be the topics we can, other, presenters can present what you would like to listen. So please fill your feedback, and it will give us immense let's just say pleasure to connect with you on, let's just say, even if it's on a writing basis. So just fill up all these details, and there are only 9 questions, just multiple choice majorly, and you can fill this up. It will only take 3 minutes. Please give us your feedback. The link is in the chat. Thank you Sumit.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, guys. So as Archana said, please go ahead and fill up those feedback. And I guess we are done for today. Hope to see you in the next session, which will be the session number 5 in the series, covering the reference implementation. Yeah, please make sure to fill the feedback. Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit.
Thank you, Sumit. Yeah.
Thank you, Sumit.
Thank you.